In a remote 19th century village, a peasant woman in her 40s gave birth to a baby boy. The father's name in the baptism record, blank. No name, no trace, only a secret buried for decades. The child grew up, changed his identity, and married a woman who should have called him uncle, or perhaps something even closer. From that tangled bloodline, a figure was born who would change the world. But the biggest question was never who he was. It was who his grandfather really was. An ordinary villager. A hidden relative. Or something far darker, a rumor that haunted him for the rest of his life. Was the blood flowing in his veins, the very blood he hated most? This is the most mysterious and forbidden family tree in history. Ready to open the first door? Like if you're curious, subscribe if you dare to continue. On the green and remote hillside in Waldviertel, Lower Austria, at the end of the 18th century and the beginning of the 19th century, thousands of poor farming families lived. They lived from hard soil depending on weather and prayer. Among them was a woman named Maria Anna Schicklgruber, a simple farmer whose life was ordinary, until ironically it became part of the most controversial lineage in world history. Maria Anna Schicklgruber was born on 15 April 1795 in the small village of Strones near Derlersheim. Her father Johann Schicklgruber was a small farmer, and her mother Terungkap Fasinger. A large family but poor. Out of 11 children, only a few survived into adulthood. Maria's life was the typical life of a farmer, working in the fields, tending livestock, and occasionally working as a household servant in the village or nearby town to earn extra income. After her mother died in 1821, Maria, then 26 years old, inherited a small amount of money, about 74 gulden. She managed it wisely, investing it in an orphan fund until it nearly doubled by 1838. Historian Werner Maser described her as a frugal, quiet, and intelligent woman in financial matters, traits rarely found among peasant women at that time. The years 1836–1837 became a turning point. At the age of 42, already an advanced age for childbirth in that era, Maria became pregnant out of wedlock. On 7 June 1837 she gave birth to a baby boy in the village of Derlersheim. In the parish church baptism record, the child was named Alois Schicklgruber. The father's name column was left empty, with only the word unehelich written, illegitimate, a child born outside marriage. 5 years later, on 10 May 1842, Maria, now 47 years old, married Johann Georg Hiedler, who was about 50 years old. The marriage took place in the village of Derlersheim or around Leonding. Alois was already 5 years old at the time, but his family name remained Schicklgruber because legitimation was not automatically applied at that time. Their marriage lasted only a short time. Maria Anna lived only 5 years after marrying. On 6 or 7 January 1847, Maria died at the age of 51 in Kleinmotten or Strones. Cause of death: tuberculosis, a deadly lung disease very common among poor farmers in the 19th century. She was buried in the local village cemetery without a prominent gravestone. Maria Anna Schicklgruber lived and died as an ordinary peasant woman, never knowing that her bloodline would flow to a figure who would change the world in the most tragic way. No original photograph of her survives, only church records and village archives tell her story. In the quiet Waldviertel among fog and fields, a simple life became the beginning of a dark history. A reminder: history is sometimes born from small things, from an unspoken name, and from secrets buried in old baptism books. Alois, now orphaned at the age of 10, was left behind after Johann Georg disappeared. His fate changed when Johann Nepomuk Hiedler, Johann Georg's younger brother, a more established farmer in Spittel, took him into his home. On Nepomuk's medium-sized farm, Alois grew up together with Nepomuk's 3 legitimate daughters, including Johanna Hiedler, born 1830, later the mother of Klara, Pölzl. Alois learned farm work, plowing, harvesting, caring for livestock, and attending elementary school in the village of Spittel, learning reading, writing, arithmetic, and Catholic religion. This period shaped his character: ambitious, disciplined, but harsh and resentful of poverty. At the age of 13, 1850, Alois left Spittel to seek his fortune in Vienna. He walked hundreds of kilometers to the capital, apprenticing as a shoemaker for 5 years. In 1855, at the age of 18, he joined the border service Zollwache of the Ministry of Finance of the Austrian Empire, part of the customs service. This was a response to government recruitment that opened the door for rural citizens through competitive examinations, a rare opportunity for someone like Alois. The early years of his career were full of transfers to various border posts across Austria. In 1860, after 5 years of service, he was promoted to Finanzwachthoofdofficer, senior customs warden, equivalent to a military corporal. This was the first promotion showing his discipline and hard work. In 1864, after special training and examination, Alois was promoted again to Provisorischer Amtsassistent, temporary office assistant, equivalent to a temporary second lieutenant. He served in Linz, the capital of Upper Austria, where he began to build a reputation as a meticulous officer. Throughout the 1860s until the early 1870s, his career continued to rise steadily, though slowly. In 1871, he was promoted to assistant customs inspector. While his career rose, his personal life began to fill with scandal. In 1873, at the age of 36, Alois married for the first time to Anna Glasl-Hörer, a 50-year-old woman, the adopted daughter of a wealthy and influential senior customs official. The marriage was more material than romantic. Anna was sickly and could not have children. Here, in 1875, Alois began to enjoy a higher social status. He was proud of his official uniform and often wore it even outside duty. However, his career almost stalled after this. It took 17 years for the next promotion due to the lack of formal education credentials. Year 1876, mid-year. At the age of 39, after success in the customs service, Alois decided to legitimize his status. He convinced local authorities, assisted by witnesses from the village, to recognize Johann Georg Hiedler, who had died since 1857, as his biological father. This process was carried out through a notary in Weitra and the parish church of Derlersheim. On 6 June 1876, the baptism record was changed. The word unehelich was replaced with within wedlock, and the father's name was filled in as Johann Georg Hiedler. Alois then applied for an official name change to Alois Hiedler or variant Hütler/Hitler. The record officer misspelled it as Hitler, possibly a common writing error in that era. In the same year, Alois also recruited Klara Pölzl, then 16 years old, daughter of Johann Nepomuk Hiedler, as a household servant in Braunau. Year 1877, early year, officially registered at the Mistelbach government office. The official name change was completed. Alois Schicklgruber became Alois Hiedler legally. The main motives: social legitimacy, career status, and possibly inheritance from Uncle Nepomuk. The name Schicklgruber disappeared and the name Hitler was born, which would later become known throughout the world. Klara Hitler or Pölzl, who would later be known as the mother of Adolf Hitler, was born with the name Klara Pölzl on 12 August 1860 in house number 24. The village of Spittel bei Weitra, part of the Weitra community, Waldviertel, Lower Austria in the Austrian Empire, now Austria. She was born in the poverty of a small farming family typical of the barren and cold Bohemia, Austria border region. Her father, Johann Baptist Pölzl, born 1828 in Spittel, died 9 January 1902, was a Gutler or smallholder who worked a narrow piece of land to survive. Her mother, Johanna Hiedler or Hütler, born 19 January 1830 in Spittel, died 8 February 1906, came from the same Hiedler family line as the ancestry of Alois Hiedler, thus creating a complicated blood relationship, officially first cousin once removed, or even a half-niece according to some historians' hypothesis. The Pölzl family had 11 or 12 children. Church records vary, but only 3 survived to adulthood due to the high infant mortality caused by disease, winter starvation, and poor sanitation. Klara, the eldest who survived. Johanna Pölzl, born 1863, died 1911, hunchbacked, unmarried, and known as temperamental. Terungkap Pölzl, born 1868, died 1938, married to a wealthy farmer Anton Schmidt 1867–1935. Klara's childhood life was a poor rural routine, helping her father in the fields, caring for livestock, cooking, and studying the Catholic religion at a simple village school. She grew up shy, quiet, diligent, and very devout, traits that later made her described by the family doctor Eduard Bloch as kind and pious. After finishing elementary education at the age of 16, year 1876, Klara left Spittel and moved to the border town of Braunau am Inn to work as a household servant, Hausangestelt, or maid, in the house of her own distant relative, Alois Hiedler, then 39 years old, still named Alois Schicklgruber until 1877. After Klara Pölzl arrived in Braunau am Inn in the summer of 1876, the household of Alois Hiedler on the upper floor of Gasthof zum Palmer Inn, house number 219, became the stage of a complicated and scandal-filled domestic drama. Alois, age 39, was already married to Anna Schicklgruber, about 53 years old at the time, a woman 14 years older than him, sickly, and unable to have children. Their marriage since 1873 had been based more on material motives and connections among customs officials than on love. Anna was often bedridden due to chronic illness, while Alois, a strict, ambitious man who liked to drink beer in taverns, began seeking satisfaction outside the home. Klara, a shy and diligent 16-year-old girl, immediately worked hard, cleaning wooden floors, cooking potato soup and black bread, washing Alois' green uniform, and helping Anna. She slept in a small servant's room, woke before dawn, and rarely spoke except to answer orders. However, not long after Klara's arrival, Alois began a secret relationship with another younger household servant, Franziska Fanny Matzelsberger, born 1861, about 19 years old at the time, a pretty girl who worked in the kitchen of the Palmer Inn or helped the household. Franziska was a hotel servant or maid who was energetic, and their relationship quickly developed into a passionate affair. Meanwhile, his sick wife Anna watched everything. Anna, already weak and suffering, eventually gave up. In 1880 she filed for a de facto separation, although an official divorce was difficult because the Catholic Church did not allow divorce. Anna remained living in the house but separately, becoming increasingly ill and isolated. Alois continued his life, working at the customs post during the day, drinking beer at night, and enjoying his secret relationship. On 13 January 1882, Franziska gave birth to Alois' first child from the affair, Alois Jr., or Alois Matzelsberger at birth. The child was born out of wedlock, and Alois did not immediately acknowledge him officially. The scandal grew larger in the small town of Braunau, where gossip spread quickly among civil servants and residents. Anna Schicklgruber died on 6 April 1883 from chronic illness, possibly tuberculosis or other health complications, about 60 years old. Anna's death opened the way for Alois to marry Franziska. Only 6 weeks after Anna's death, on 22 May 1883, Alois, age 46, married Franziska, age 21-22, in Braunau. The marriage was more because of Alois' desire to legitimize his child than pure love. Not long after the marriage, on 4 July 1883, Franziska gave birth to a second child, Angela Hiedler, later to become Adolf's close half-sister, Alois Jr., who soon legitimized as Alois Hiedler Jr. Franziska, unlike the passive Anna, was firm and jealous. She saw Klara Pölzl, who was still living as a servant, as a potential rival. One of Franziska's first actions as wife was to send Klara away from the house around 1883. Klara returned to the village of Spittal bei Witra, leaving Braunau with a heart that may have been hurt but still silent. Franziska fully took over the household, caring for Alois Jr. and the baby Angela. However, the happiness of Alois' second marriage was short. In early 1884, Franziska was diagnosed with tuberculosis, a deadly lung disease at that time. She became weaker, coughed blood, and had to be cared for. Alois, practical and ambitious, called Klara Pölzl back, now aged 23-24, to help care for the children and the household while Franziska was ill. Klara returned to Braunau, lived in the same house, and began caring for Alois Jr. and Angela with great affection. Her gentle maternal nature quickly became visible. During Franziska's illness, the relationship between Alois and Klara changed drastically, from employer and servant to lovers. Alois began a romantic and sexual relationship with Klara while Franziska was still alive but lying weak. Klara became pregnant from this relationship before Franziska died. On 10 August 1884, Franziska died of tuberculosis at the age of 23, leaving Alois with 2 small children and Klara, who was already pregnant. Only 5 months after Franziska's death, Alois decided to marry Klara. However, their blood relationship was complicated. Klara was officially Alois' first cousin once removed after Alois' name changed to Hiedler in 1877, from Hiedler. The Catholic Church forbade marriage between close relatives without special dispensation. Alois and Klara submitted a request for episcopal dispensation to the local bishop in Linz and eventually to Rome. The process took time, but it was finally approved for reasons of family necessity and the child that would be born. On the morning of 7 January 1885, the wedding ceremony was held simply in a rented room on the upper floor of Gasthof zum Palmer in Braunau am Inn. There was no big celebration, no large guests, only minimal witnesses and a priest. Alois, age 47, and Klara, age 24, officially became husband and wife. Alois returned to work at the customs post immediately after the ceremony, while Klara began her role as wife and stepmother to Alois Jr. and Angela. Klara continued to call her husband uncle, according to family custom, even after marriage, a habit that showed their close blood relationship and the household hierarchy. Imagine a small family tree in the remote village of Waldviertel, Austria in the 19th century. Everyone knew each other, and marriages between relatives were fairly common because the village was small and isolated. This is where the story of Alois Hiedler and Klara Pölzl begins. The official recorded line that made the church consider there was a blood relationship. Martin Hiedler 1762–1829 and Anna Maria Gerschel 1760–1854 had two sons. Johann Georg Hiedler 1792–1857. Johann Nepomuk Hiedler 1807–1888. They were brothers. Johann Georg married Maria Anna Schicklgruber in 1842. At that time, Maria Anna already had an illegitimate child named Alois Schicklgruber, born 1837. Johann Georg became Alois' legal stepfather. In 1876, Alois, already an adult, applied for name legitimation. With witnesses including Johann Nepomuk, Alois was recognized as the legitimate son of Johann Georg. His name changed from Schicklgruber to Hiedler, a misspelling of Hiedler by a church official. From that moment on, legally Alois was the son of Johann Georg Hiedler/Hiedler. On the other side, Johann Nepomuk Hiedler had a daughter named Johanna Hiedler. Johanna married Johann Baptist Pölzl, and they had a daughter named Klara Pölzl. So legally, after 1876, Alois was the son of Johann Georg Hiedler. Klara was the granddaughter of Johann Nepomuk Hiedler. Because Johann Georg and Johann Nepomuk were brothers, Alois and Klara were considered first cousin once removed according to official records. Why the church gave a special dispensation in 1885. In 1885, the Catholic Church forbade marriage between close relatives, canon law concerning consanguinity or blood relationship. Because the family name had officially become Hiedler from Hiedler, and the baptism records and the 1876 legitimation showed a lineage leading to the same Hiedler brothers Martin and Anna Maria, the church considered that Alois and Klara had a blood relationship in the third or fourth degree. Important note, at that time, 1885, DNA testing did not exist at all. DNA as a substance was first identified in 1869, but its structure and function were only understood in 1953. DNA testing to determine biological relationships only appeared in the 1980s. So the church had no scientific method to verify whether there was truly shared blood or not. The church relied only on official documents, baptism records, marriage records, the 1876 legitimation. Recorded family names Hiedler/Hiedler. Witness statements in church archives. Because the official documents showed the same ancestral line, the church assumed there was kinship. Therefore, Alois and Klara had to request a special dispensation from the bishop, reportedly even reaching the Vatican for the marriage to be allowed. The dispensation was granted because the relationship was considered distant enough, not first cousins, but still required official permission. If Alois' biological father was not one of the Hiedler brothers. Now imagine this scenario. Suppose Alois' biological father was an unknown villager who was never recorded, not Johann Georg, not Johann Nepomuk. Then, Maria Anna Schicklgruber still married Johann Georg in 1842, Johann Georg remained the legal stepfather. The 1876 legitimation still applied, Alois was still legally recognized as Johann Georg's son, because it was a legal procedure, not a DNA test. But by blood, Alois would have no Hiedler ancestry at all. Meaning, Alois and Klara would not be related by blood at all, no shared ancestor biologically. Their connection would exist only through marriage, not ancestry. In this case, a church dispensation should not have been necessary because there would be no real blood relationship. But in reality, the church still granted dispensation because official records showed lineage through the Hiedler/Hiedler name. The church followed the legal and church documents already written. Since DNA testing did not exist, the church could not prove whether there was or was not a biological link, so it relied on the recorded genealogy. Final conclusion. The relationship between Alois and Klara appears complicated because 1. The 1876 legitimation tied Alois to the Hiedler line legally. 2. The Church followed those official records right arrow therefore assumed a blood relationship through the Hiedler/Hitler name. 3. Because DNA testing did not exist at that time, the Church could not verify biology and simply followed the documents. 4. If Alois' real biological father was an outsider, not one of the Hiedler brothers, then biologically the situation would not be complicated at all, they would not be relatives. But the official records and the 1876 legitimation made it appear as if they were related. That is why this family tree is often described as tangled, a mixture of law, church records, and the absence of scientific technology to prove blood relationships with certainty.